You know how I've started to think of all this little drama stuff that's happening and people really follow it, and there's sort of like people who just use Twitter to make jokes, or they follow sports, and they maybe even kind of shallow political engagement, like they just sort of read big takes that get retweeted around and maybe make their own little comments and stuff. But then there's people who really get into the drama between different accounts, and now it's like podcasts and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I've started to think of those as like soap operas. Like it's how like old ladies, they have their stories that they always have to go and watch their stories. And it's the same thing. Like we're turning into like grannies who got to watch their stories, you know?
Yeah.
And when you were describing the people who had the details all mixed up, I was just kind of thinking about that they're making it up for themselves. Like it's all very, like you are to some degree involved in the creation of your own soap opera, that, you know, you get to see people argue back and forth, but what the meaning of that argument is, you kind of make that narrative up for yourself. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the appeal to people, because that's a common narcissist fantasy too, right? To be like the protagonist in your own tale or whatever.
Right.
So if everyone thinks of themselves like that, it's like about like dueling narratives. Just like whose narrative is going to win? Who's going to pay attention to this? And that's so sick. It really bugs me.
Well, I mean, it would explain the political inflection that a lot of this stuff takes, because then you can sort of imagine that this argument between two morons on the internet is actually like representative of these giant world historical forces, you know, kind of playing.
Yeah, but you can see how completely fabricated all of it is.
Yeah. You can, but if you don't want to see that, then you won't.
Sure, definitely. But when it's so clearly manufactured, doesn't that? I mean, I'm going to ask this rhetorically, and I know my answer is not the same as other people's answers. But doesn't that take the appeal away of it? Like it's not real. It's just manufactured beefs. I don't see the appeal of that. I really don't like to pay attention to this stuff at all anymore. I don't know. I know it holds an appeal for people, but just not for me. I don't know.
I just always think it's funny how it has to be tied now by a chain of causation to someone dying. Like it's always, that's every argument now. No, every argument online is always, there's always like, you know, oh, if you like say, if you fave this person who knows this person who said this slur, and then someone might hear that slur and then might be empowered as a white nationalist to go then, you know, attack this guy to know, die. You know what I mean? Like it's always, there's always that kind of mental causation in there that like people are like, you know, you can't, you know, tolerate these ironic jokes because
is that because they need
like,
to
that's why I make
ramp
the jokes.
It up?
But that's the idea, right? Is that there's some sort of like chaos effect, you know, like a chain of causation that comes from, because that's the reason why you're not allowed to do ironic jokes now, is because there's some sort of way that it all kind of shakes out to actual politics getting bad or something like that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's just amazing that like that's why they you know, that's why they kind of create these kind of stories that kind of spin out into extremes, is because if it were just like two podcasts fighting or something like that, then no one would care at all. Like they need to kind of anchor it into some sort of like trauma outside of online or something. So, yeah.
I guess so.